August 18, 1818. Gazette de Trois-Rivières, Three Rivers, Canada. For the Three Rivers Gazette. Mr. Editor, for the information of the public, I beg leave to communicate you a letter received from my friend, Captain O'Crinigan, and which will not more surprise yourself and readers than it did me. Though it came to hand too late for your last number, yet I can assure you that I have not mentioned a word of it, intending that you shall have all the credit of publishing it. You will find by the letter that an immense sea serpent has made his appearance in the lake, and but a few miles from this place. How can he have made his way into our freshwaters, I cannot imagine. If he came by the way of Guelph and up the St. Lawrence, it is very surprising that he has not been heard of before, or, if he came by land, it is equally surprising that an animal of such an enormous size could have traveled through so large a tract of country without being seen, unless he be actually, as Mr. O'Crinigan suppose, possessed of wings, in which case he may have reached this by flight. Be that as it may, there he is, and will be, as he certainly is, a subject of wonder to the inhabitants of this country, who have always supposed that the American accounts of these animals were fictitious. In order to remove all doubt of the truth of this account, I have transcribed a copy of this letter verbatim, and do not hesitate to pledge my word for its veracity. I purpose proceeding to the lake, attended by a few friends, to satisfy myself of his dimensions, etc., of which you shall be informed on my return. In the meantime, I remain yours, etc., etc., Thomas P. Pottle. Copy of letter. On board my schooner off Three Rivers, Monday, August 10th, 1818. Dear Pottle, I anchor for a few minutes only to inform you and your friends of a most extraordinary incident which happened to me on my way down. On Sunday, being under way and about halfway through Lake St. Peter, the man at the helm, Paul Crimps, informed me that there appeared something like a sandbank a few rods ahead, and appeared much alarmed, being then in the right channel. I immediately went down for my glass, and on returning on deck, was, to my great surprise and that of Paul and the crew, within 50 yards of an enormous sea serpent. He, or she as the case may be, appeared to be of a mixed dark brown, red, green, and yellow color, about 103 feet and a half in length, and about as thick as a puncheon. He has several large protuberances on the back, I think about 40, which appear of a darker color than the rest of his body. His head is of a greenish cast. His eyes are large, being about 11 inches and a half apart, and in the midst of this space is a horn, which projects straight forward about 7 inches and 3/4, and is about 2 inches and 3/4 in thickness near the head, decreasing gradually to a point, and is apparently as hard and as white as ivory. Not wishing to come in too close contact with the gentleman or lady, as the case may be, who might with a single turn of his tail have upset the schooner. Being then without ballast, I directed Paul to leave the channel and pass to windward of him. We were, however, obliged to pass within a few yards of his body, and could easily distinguish several marks or scars near the head, which are undoubtedly those of musket balls, and induces me to think he belonged to the same party that visited Boston and some other American ports. I also observed something, which he has attached to each side of his body, that exactly resemble a pair of wings. This, however, I cannot be positive, being at some distance before we observed them, and being attentively viewing his head, in order to ascertain the size and situation of his mouth. For it is surprising he never once opened it. Crimps indeed seems to think he has none, but I am rather inclined to believe he kept it shut. Having no balls on board, I discharged a musket at him, loaded with duckshot, at the report of which he disappeared, causing a whirlpool that affected the course of the vessel. Thus you see, my dear Tom, that I have been as circumspect as possible, at the same time without omitting the least thing regarding this unwelcome visitor. I shall possibly stop longer at the Three Rivers on my return, in which case shall give you a call. My affections to your wife, and believe me yours, etc., etc., signed, Patrick O'Crinigan. P. Pottle, Esquire, Three Rivers. I certify the above account to be true and correct. Signed, Paul Crimps. P.S. If you are acquainted with any masters of steamboats, pray don't mention a word of it to them, as this monster may have been sent by divine providence to rid us of such vessels, in which case I sincerely hope he will meet with complete success, and between you and me, if he could swallow old M.N., it would be so much the better, but in this case I hope he will not follow the example of the whale. Signed, P.O.C. February 24, 1819. The Republican Compiler, Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. Natchez, November 21. See Serpent Beat. The following letter has been handed to us for publication by the gentleman who received it, and who vouches for the veracity of the writer. We have followed our copy literally, and have only one remark to offer, that if the monster described really exists, otherwise than in the writer's brain, living mammoths, sea serpents, horse mackerels, or even krakens will soon cease to be thought wonderful. Camp among the Comanches, October 20, 1818. Dear Sir, I received yours, bear date of October 1, 1818, requesting information concerning the animal which was lately discovered by the natives of the province of Texas, and duly take my pen to answer it. On the 10th of August, 1818, there was a report by two chiefs of the tribe of Indians called Lapapus that a tremendous animal had been discovered in their neighborhood. It was represented by them as an animal so different from what naturalists have delineated in their description as to give me some doubts of its existence. But, knowing the veracity of these chiefs, my curiosity was excited to make further inquiry. I went to the place where it was said to have been seen, which was called the Prairie del Grand Ajou, or the Prairie of the Great Spring. I found the place entirely desolate. Every native had retired to a considerable distance. They told me 'twas a fact that Cayman de Terra ruled predominant in that part of the country. They said, if I did not believe them, they would take me to a precipice, from under which the spring flowed, where I could remain in perfect security, and from whence I could see him with all his natural motions. I accepted their proposal. We arrived at the spot on the 2nd September, but saw nothing. On the next day, about 7 a.m., I discovered a motion among the reeds and bushes, which the natives said was caused by the approach of the animal. Not many minutes had elapsed when he made his appearance. He approached the spring and drank by lapping, after which he retired to a small distance and partly secreted himself. He placed his underjaw or chin on a smooth rock, and being extended at full length, his tail reached a tree, which in this country is called bois d'arc. I was desirous to attempt to kill him by firing down the precipice upon him, but being told by the natives that an attempt had been made several times in vain, and that if I did not disturb him, I would see a struggle between him and the mustangs, or wind horses, I desisted, and about 10 o'clock a.m., when some of these mustangs, with which this prairie abounds, came to drink, he raised his tail and fastened it on the neck of a large horse. It appeared that the tail of this animal possessed the faculty of the proboscis of an elephant, for with it he circulated twice the neck of the horse, and at the same time seized a large tree with his forefeet. The horse pitched and bounded tremendously, but in the end he was choked and killed. The animal then turned to him and devoured the most of him at a meal. When I had an opportunity to descend to measure the distance from the rock on which he had placed his chin to the tree, which was 53 feet, the diameter of his body and the largest part appeared at least 4.5 or 5 feet. He was of dark brown or rusty black color. His tail from the hind legs appeared somewhat larger from thence to the end of the nose. His head was about the same proportion as that of an alligator, but his hind legs were considerably longer than his fore ones. When he went off, he folded his tail over his back, which discovered to me that his whole force and action lay in this part, for both offensive and defensive operations. I inquired if any other animal of the same description had been seen, and was told there had not, that this had come from the northwest on one of the head branches of the Rio del Norte, that he was never seen to attack any other animal than a mustang, and that he had been fired upon without effect, since which I have seen a Spaniard by name of Don Pedro de Dios, who observed him and marked his actions for 3 days, all which were similar to what I have described. The animal is certainly not more strange than curious in natural history. Knowing you to be a man of taste, I have been minute in its description. If required, I will give my affidavit of what I have written, and will produce the affidavits of 3 other persons. February 24, 1819. The Republican Compiler, Gettysburg. Marvelous, doubtful. Nashville, Tennessee, January 5. Major Woodward of this county handed us for publication the subsequent extract of a letter which he lately received from a gentleman in Tennessee with whom he became acquainted during the late Indian War. On my return from Mobile, I stopped at the house of one Hago Ivetez at 12 Mile Creek. I there saw an animal very nearly of the human form and capable of walking erect. Its skin was smooth over all its body except its head, and, on inquiry, I was informed by its owner that it was about 3 years old. It is of the masculine gender, and when erect, very little different in appearance from a human being of the same age, except in its head, which bears a strong resemblance to the head of a young bull. Its complexion is a bright yellow, but no protuberances on its head, yet indicates those weapons of defense and annoyance wisely afforded by Providence to the Taurus class. The dam of this young animal is nearly in the same form with her young, and, though ugly in an extreme degree, and her countenance strongly indicating idiotism, yet I learned from her owner that her actions sometimes display glimmerings of reason, and at times she would actually articulate. He was, he said, endeavoring to ascertain by signs and the presentation of different animals to what class the creature belonged, which had aided her in the production of her young, and hoped ere long to succeed. I have carefully examined the nomenclatures of Buffon and Goldsmith, but can find no description analogous to the animal in question.